I would like to introduce Dave Meicher. He is the president of the Rock River
Rock River
Button
Button Club.
Club.
No, we don't eat liver either. No, Rock River.
Liver's good for you.
Yes.
Anyway, and the Madison Button Club. So we've got somebody here that kind of knows what he's talking about. So I'm really excited. And then here we have Judy Winder. Winder.
We answer to anything. We say Winder.
Winder. I'm just having a heck of a time. I just asked her too. And she's a retired school teacher and has been collecting buttons for 20 years. So we've got some people that we can really pick up their brains. So thank you for coming, and I'll give the floor to you. I don't know how to turn on my phone.
Well, thank you, Maureen, for having us, and thank you all for coming. Today's talk is about the art of collecting buttons. I'm going to talk about what it takes to be successful in button collecting. From A to Z, we'll run through it, and by the time you leave, you're on your way to becoming a successful button collector. Judy is going to talk about competitions within button collecting. Now, these are for the serious button collectors and the ones that have been in it for a while. But she's one of them, and she knows her stuff.
Most days.
Yeah. Well, first thing I should do is tell you how I got into button collecting. I've been a collector of other things all my life. As a kid, baseball cards. As an adult, I'm into Parker pens, I'm into antiques, toys. But buttons I wasn't into until rather recently. That's when I retired, and I found out I had 50 extra hours a week, and what am I going to do with them? And yeah, I wanted something different. I knew that, but I didn't know exactly what it was. One day I was over at one of my friend's houses. He's a collector also. And we were rummaging around through his overstock, and here we come across several trays of nice collectible buttons. And I go, oh, geez, these are nice, you know. And the more I thought of it, I made him an offer, and he sold them to me. He gave me a couple books to go along with it, and I brought them home. I kept them on my kitchen table for a couple of days. Every time I walked by them, I'm going to learn about these. And then one day I woke up and he says, well, that's it. I'm going to collect buttons too. Well, how am I going to get more buttons? I said, that's the next question. Well, I knew the regular routes, you know, the rummage sales, the auctions, the flea markets, the antique malls, but I want them now. So I decided to put an ad in the papers. I put an ad, wanted quality antique button collections. I put them in the Gazette, I put them in the Beloit paper, Delvin paper, Craigslist, Jotter, the Messenger. I had ads all over. I was getting calls all over too. I came home nights just exhausted just from running around. And to tell you the truth, I almost got out before I got in. Because most of what people were showing me wasn't really what I wanted to collect. I didn't consider them up to what I wanted. But then I got a call from this lady who lived north of town, and she said she'd been collecting buttons for 60 plus years, and she was ready to sell. I go, oh, wow, sounds good. So I went right over there, and she let me in, and I walked in her house, and over her couch she had all these framed buttons. I never seen that before. That looks pretty nice though. I guess her husband made the frames, but looked very nice. And then she led me into the dining room where the main collection was, and she stored them in tubs, those big Tupperware tubs, you know. And she put the buttons in individual flips, those coin flips. She had never been a member of a button club or anything. I'm like, where'd you get all these buttons? And she says, well, I got some from my mother, but I collected most of them. And so we talked for a while, and can I think about this overnight, you know, because it was a pretty large collection, and I'm new to this. I didn't know a thing about buttons before I got into them. And she said, sure. Well, I thought on it over the night. I told myself I'm going to make a decision the next day, and I did. And I decided to buy them. I went over there, and haggled on a price, and then I purchased them. Her husband helped me load them in my truck, filled my truck. But then I got them home, took them out. Now they're in my front room. All the frames are on my kitchen table. You know, there's 2 rooms I can't use now. I got to decide what I'm going to do with them all. I knew I had to sort them in that, but I was kind of lost as to how to proceed. But then this lady called me in response to one of my ads, and she asked if I ever thought about joining a button club. And I go, button club? They have button clubs? And she goes, oh yeah, we got button clubs. And she was a member of the Rockton Club at the time, and that was the first club I joined. And right after that, they got me to join the Madison, Wisconsin Button Club. And I can actually say that button clubs has kept my passion alive because they taught me so much. Most everything I'm going to tell you from now on, I learned from the button clubs and or the people in the button clubs. Not that I couldn't have learned some of it on my own, but it would have taken me much longer. The way to go is join a button club. They only meet once a month. Dues are like, what are they, $10 a year? Very low. And, you know, we have our officers and that. We got president, vice president, secretary, that. And what I like, you can buy, sell, trade, bring your own buttons. I get questions answered. That's my favorite part. And my second favorite is show and tell. Everybody brings something in that they've acquired in the past month, button related. They talk about it, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it takes. It's very interesting, some of the things that people talk about. And that's the first thing you should do. Anybody who wants to jot that down, join a button club. And there's 2 in the area that I'm a member of, and we'll gladly welcome you. They only meet once a month. But okay, to start out, back to my buttons now. I know I had to sort them. Well, how am I going to sort them? I go, well, this book is the book you're going to need. It's Button Materials A to Z by Jacqueline Howells. It's got, believe it or not, over 140 different buttons, materials that buttons are made out of, in alphabetical order. It's a cheap book, very inexpensive. And it sure helps you. It has all the newer buttons too, which confused me a lot. But this will set your mind straight as to what is what. And another tool you'll need if you get the book is a tester. This is our #1 tool that this book recommends to test your buttons. And this is a hot needle tester. You just plug it in, you pinprick the back of your button, inconspicuous spot, and by how easy or hard it goes into the button, and by the smell that it gives off when it makes contact with the button, will tell you what it's made out of, just by following her directions. What do you got?
Now, would that destroy the button? Would that destroy the button?
No, you do it on the back, inconspicuous spot, and just pinprick. You're not sitting there stabbing it like you're a duel or something. You're just testing it to see. And believe it or not, a lot of buttons give off a very distinct odor, which I didn't know, but after you get one of these are very inexpensive too. Now the second book you need is a book that tells you if you have a collectible button or not. Believe it or not, unfortunately, but the majority of the buttons are not collectible. Button collectors like us, we refer to them as craft buttons. They're good for showing on clothes and that, but they're not what we collect. This is called the Big Book of Buttons. This is the 3rd edition, and we call it the Encyclopedia of Buttons. It's got everything in it. This book is fabulous. This book is always at my side when I'm into my buttons, always. It's an expensive book too, though. It's like $400, not cheap. But the resale value is just about the same. I've seen several resale and they get the same price. It's a good investment. You're not out the money, you're going to get it. And they've only been out a couple of years. They have 2 other older versions of this same book in a single volume, one with a red cover, one with a blue. And you can get them for under $100. And they're just as good, but they don't have the newer buttons, the ones after World War II, per se. They're primarily focused on the antique buttons and the older ones. And that's the best book that I ever printed, and it never leaves my side. Okay, now back to my buttons I have around my house. I know what they're made out of now, and I know if they're collectible or not. And it's got a price list that goes with it too, which is a guide, just a guide. And it helps you, know what to look for when you're out button hunting. And so I know what's collectible. I know what they're made out of. Now I need one more book. That's called the Blue Book. That's this book. Little book. We refer to it as the Bible. It has all the rules that a button collector needs to sort his buttons. You can only get this book. It's free only if you join the National Button Society. This is a society that started in 1938. They had their first national show in 1939 in Chicago, and they're still going strong today. You can get older, and they have a website. You've got to get on their website. It's called the NBS website, National Button Society website. It'll tell you how to take care, how to maintain your buttons, how to clean your buttons. It has so many links that it's a very important website to know. And I'll give you an example of how they categorize, that book has 140 different materials, but they break it down in here to 15 different categories. So they combine a lot of them, which helps. They have 4 in here just for picture buttons, a couple sections just for pattern buttons, one for realistics, for clothing buttons, military buttons.
What's the most expensive button you've seen?
I have one I got a couple $1,000. One button. I didn't pay that for it. But I got it at an auction. Right place at the right time. But I'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, now I got all my buttons that I bought in this collection. I have them all sorted. Now what am I going to do with them? Well, nearly all button collectors, they card them. You can pick up these cards. This is a standard size card. You can pick them up most anywhere. You can buy them on the internet, pick them up at shows. And if you're energetic, you can make your own. Most of the ones I had for my buttons, I make my own. You get that 40% off coupon for Hobby Lobby and Michael's, and they come in big sheets, and you can save half the money, but you need a paper cutter though. That's one thing you'll need. This is thick cardboard, but it works. And I make most of my own. And then you need to cover them. They come in 2 kinds of covers. These are called file covers you can get on the internet. I order them in bulk. I get a whole box, 25 or something. And they're very inexpensive. These are like a quarter, and these are $1 or something. But they protect your buttons. You need that. They just slide right in, and you got it protected. The thing I like about them is, then what are you going to do with them? You have all these loose cards laying around. They make these boxes called a Baker box, and it's perfect fit. I mean, they go right in there. You can put 25 or more filled cards in one box, which helps. Okay. So now we got them all boxed. And here, these are some examples of cards that I put together. I have a couple hundred of them, but it's fun. It's just something to do. Well, how are you going to attach the button to the card? That's the next question. Well, a lot of old people use those pipe cleaners and that, which are not good for your buttons. They'll rust certain buttons, especially celluloid and metal buttons. We pick up these little wires here. You get them on the internet, you get them all over. A bag like this, a couple of dollars, not much.
What kind of wires would they be called?
They're called telephone wire. You could do your own. I go to Home Depot, and they sell it by the foot. It's on a big coil. Cut your own. There's 6 individual wires under this. So whatever length you got, you cut it, you got 6 more. But I use this for special buttons that need a longer or shorter. This normally suffices. And when I mount my cards, I like to mount them so they stay put. I don't like them moving around because it damages them. What I use on a blank card is ice pick. 1 stab, and then for a normal shank, fits right in there. If you have a bigger shank, like some buttons do have bigger shanks, that's the part that this attaches to, you just ream it out a little with a pencil is all I do. I like them lay flat, they don't move, and they stay protected. So now I have them all carded. Oh, another way to display your buttons, you frame them. I get carried away with that, but I've got over 3 dozen frames up in my house, and they're all different theme, and they're fun to do. The middle one there, that's in a convex frame. You don't have to do anything special to that frame because you got that gap in there between the buttons and the glass. On the other 2, the flat paneled ones, you have to turn them into shadow boxes. Oh, this is just pine trim. You can get it at Home Depot, Menards. It's about $6, $7 for 8, 10-foot section. Just cut it, put it on the back, and you got just enough room. And you convert that, same as this now. And that's another way to display your buttons. Okay. Now what else did I got to talk about? Well, you want to know where you can get buttons? Well, next week, and I have flyers up here, we have our annual show in Rockton. We call it Button Days, Fun Day with Buttons. It's free to the public. We have a lot of quality dealers there. It's open early in the morning, homemade food, air conditioned, overlooks Rock River. You're 1 block within, 4 antique shops, all within 1 block, 2 on each side of the street. It's a nice day to spend, and it's inexpensive, but I want it to be. And this club of ours has been going on since long before any of us been members, but back into the 50s. So it's a fun show. Come on down next Wednesday. And now you're all in luck because the following week, or the first week in August, is the National Butt Society. This is the big one. Every year they have 1 show, and they go all around the country. This year it's in Wisconsin. It'll be at Appleton for an entire week. The flyers are up there, their schedule's up there. The show will be open only 2 or 3 days. But the first one I went to, it blew me away. I've never seen anything quite like it. You want to see buttons, there are going to be buttons there. Our show is nice, but that's the top. And I talked earlier about joining the National Butt Society. The dues are like $35 a year, but you get a lot of free things with that. You do get the Blue Book, which is a necessity. You get 5 of these pamphlets they send you every year. And they go into depth on a certain area within button collecting. And they're very good at how they do it, too. Okay, we got that. Are there any questions? Okay.
You said you bought a $100 button at an auction.
How did the auctioneer present that button? Separately, or was it on a?
I got this one from an auction that happened in New Hampshire. It was online. I met the lady, she's a national button dealer. She's got the best website on the internet. And she keeps me informed, once a year she'll have an auction over the internet. And you bid. She has, 1,000 lots, 1,000 different buttons. This one was a single button. But frequently, there'll be a whole card, sometimes there'll be lots of cards. And that's where do you get more buttons? The top two places are auctions and button shows. Word of mouth is nice, yes?
What makes a button valuable? What are the criteria?
Supply and demand. What's it made out of? What's it look like? Picture buttons are the favorite of all collectors. Glass is a close second, glass buttons.
I have some Poison buttons.
Oh, enamel buttons,
Is that valuable?
yes.
Okay, although.
And when I talk about the price guide there, price guides are always high, I think, that they sell a book, but quality is everything. I mean, if you have a nick, a scratch, a chip, that's going to greatly diminish the value of a button. When I buy buttons, I usually buy the whole collection, buy them all. I wholesale out what I don't want and keep the rest. And I've been doing that with all my other stuff since I started collecting, and it works with buttons too. And they're out there. You just got to know where to find them. I didn't know a thing about it, but within a couple of years, I had a lot of contacts of where to get buttons when I wanted one or needed some.
Are you going to show us the $100 button?
No, it's not a $100 button, no. It's a $2,000 button. You come to the show next week, I'll have it down there. Next week will be next Wednesday, down in Rockton. I'll bring that card.
Describe it then.
It's a cat playing a fiddle made out of cast bronze. It's about 1880s, 1890s. I was shocked too, because I didn't know that until after I got it. In fact, but 3 or 4 of my higher buttons, I didn't know that they were until after I got them. I just.
Do you know who it was made by?
Pardon me?
Do you know who made that button?
No.
Does the manufacturer?
It's in the big book. It's in that big book. I can point it out to you later after the
Okay.
talk here.
Dave, can I mention that if you come to our little Rockton thing, we will have probably the foremost dealer in the world there, Gary Brockman, and you will see buttons at that show that start out at $25 and go to several thousand. And even if you don't want to collect, it's such a wonderful experience to see the wide range that's available, and it's fun, and it's free. It's free to get in, right?
That was true. She's a member of both the clubs I am also, and she makes her own buttons. She's very good at it, too. Studio buttons, we call them. Anything else? Well, there's one thing, one story I'd like to tell you before I leave, and this is a true story now. About 25, 30 years ago, I was at an auction out on the farm outside of Edgerton. Great auction. A lot of antiques, a lot of collectibles. And then about an hour and a half after it started, the other auctioneer came on and says, well, I'm going to break it up. We're going to have the button collectors go over to these tables down there. They had a half a dozen tables set up with buttons on it, which I had walked through ahead of time, but didn't think much of it. And he gave the time, okay, well, the people are interested in the buttons, come on over here. Well, the majority of the people went over there. And I'm in shock. What are these people thinking? How could they possibly be going over to the buttons when all these nice antiques are sitting on these tables here? I liked it at the time. I thought, this is great. This opened the field up for the other things. But today I can honestly say, today I know why most of the people went over there. That must have been a high-grade auction, a button auction. I missed out on, but I did learn something that better late than never, that there is a high collectability in buttons, especially collector buttons.
What do you think
people find so fascinating about buttons?
There's no stop signs. Oh, I ain't kidding you. You can go on forever.
No bottom to the pit.
No stop signs. Like that blue book alone. It's got one section that's got black glass buttons. But under black glass, there's 40 different categories of black glass. I guess a new one, I've never heard of it. Well, they explain exactly what it looks like, how it is, and that. It's that way with all of them. They got them divided into sections. There's no stop signs. You can learn as much as you want. I can collect buttons till I die and still have a lot to learn. It intrigues me. It's just will intrigue any collector.
I was going to say, I think it's like any collection, what's interesting about it is that all the different colors and shapes and materials and it doesn't matter what your collection is, that's the kinds of things you're always looking for in them. And with buttons, you've got it all. And over the years, there's been, I'm going to guess, hundreds, if not thousands of manufacturers that do things just a little different. Am I correct on that?
Mm-hmm. You can find the same button in a dozen different materials, all by different manufacturers, especially talking picture buttons.
What about buttons when you get them and they're on the card still? Is it something, is that another collection? Buttons on them?
People do collect old buttons that are on the original card.
Yeah, on the original ones.
Yes, they do. I don't, but there are collectors out there that do.
Are there some buttons that do have the maker's mark on the back?
Oh, yes, that's always a plus. You always look for the back mark. That can double the value of a button just because of that back mark. Because you can trace the back mark as to when it was made, for sure. Like over the years, they change their back marks, maybe a dot less or a letter less, or they add this, that. Back marks are important. You always look for them. Most antique buttons, if they're metal, they're back marked, most of them. Oh, I always look for back marks, yeah. That's a plus.
So do people specialize in various fields, like maybe designer buttons or?
Sure. Oh, yeah. They all have, I have my specialties, you know. I like picture buttons, I like glass, I like bakelite, you know. Oh, there's a story that goes with this frame, too. I forgot to tell you. A couple years ago, this frame had a beautiful beveled mirror in it. I was going to give it to my son for Christmas, him and his family to hang over the fireplace. I just finished putting it back together, and the whole mirror cracked all the way down the center. I go, oh, I had to give him something else for that Christmas, but I kept the frame. It was too nice a frame. I said, I'm going to keep this. It took me 2 years to figure out what I was going to put in it, or have enough of something to put in it. But
Why do you think the mirror cracked?
it was probably me.
So we could add a button collection to it. That's
Oh, I don't know. I've got some large frames. This is the one I just finished, and it's the largest one I have too. And I had to move it upstairs because I ran out of room downstairs, wall space anyway. But it looks good in the bedroom it's in. It highlights it. And another thing, when people come over for the first time and they're not button collectors, I give them a nickel tour if they ask. And they have a deep appreciation for buttons when they leave. They're just, wow. They add a lot of decor to any room you put them in. If I take a frame off the wall, I don't feel the same when I'm in that room because something's missing, I can tell you. And they do have, I found out they have therapeutic properties. Whenever I'm down or a little sad and that, all they have to do is stand up and go look at one of my frames. It's magic. It works. It really does. And I've been doing it ever since I found out it works. So you do what works. Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Judy, and she's going to tell you about competitions with it.
There's a Battersea company in Wisconsin, and it's a standout because the shank on the button is the face of a man. And do you think I can find one to show you for drag and brag right now? Can't. Anyway, collecting is an addiction, whether you want to admit it or not. You start with one button and it's not going to, it'll be one button. Well, you can see what my one button has added to here. And you can't get into one of my rooms at home because it's my button room. I did bring a list. Oh, I guess I would walk off without that. If you want to take a copy, this is what is in the books that we get about every 6 months. It's the list of what shows are going to expect to be judging. And we'll just give you an idea. The first is the class, the number of buttons, the size of buttons. All of the information is there, and then you start developing your tray. David happens to like metal. They don't really do a lot for me. I like things that are unique, and metal usually doesn't have it. Now, Sue makes them studio buttons, they're called, but she's made some out of felt and out of plastic and out of a potato that she dried in the oven and then dyed, and the list just goes on and on. And if I can find a uniqueness, that's my pleasure. So, yes, you wonder where your mind goes sometimes. It's out the window. I have a short, I'd rather talk to you than read to you, but this was written by a friend of mine, and she was at one time state president of Illinois. She's also a practicing attorney. She said, I have been asked to write a paragraph about the 2008 National Button Show. So not so sure that was such a good idea. I know I'm supposed to know and how smoothly the show went, and which is true, except for the fun part. Oh, I had fun. I had fun spending, and she has capitalized, way too much money. It's kind of like you look at it, you pick it up, you touch it, you walk away, you think, and all of a sudden you walk back and buy it. I began the national show in Appleton on Saturday and ended it 1 week later with a cloth shopping bag bulging at the seams and a full credit card and an empty bank account. I'm sure that once I have the guts to start going through the bag and reviewing my purchases, that I will be excited all over again. At least that is my hope. In the meantime, I'm working really hard, literally, to pay for all the fun I had. After collecting for nearly 35 years, and yikes, one would think there would be one button that you really didn't care to buy, but that's wrong. Why is it at every national I see more and more buttons? Yes, Division I. That's usually the most expensive buttons, the rare buttons, that I've never seen before and quite simply must have. Alas, I take great comfort in the fact that if you're reading this, you understand my plight completely and you have the same issues as I have, because misery loves company. And don't we have fun in our misery? Yes, we do. On another note, how can I be limited to just one paragraph? Impossible. I have to tell you about some of the things that I found quite well amusing. Judy Winder worked the week before the National at our firm, filling in for a runner who was on vacation. Judy's job was to run errands around town, delivering and picking up papers. While waiting for her list of errands for the day, Judy could be found at the runner's desk with buttons spread everywhere. She was working on her competition trays. At least once a day, she would stomp, literally, into my office and declare, "I've had it, I'm done, I'm not doing this again." Only with all new buttons spread everywhere and around the office would find Judy quite fascinating and colorful individual, but then it was a week before the national show. Long story short, this woman who had had it won a ribbon on nearly every tray she entered. That was quite by luck. Not only did she win the blue ribbon, in my category, which was dogs, I received 2 dots on my tray, and I've still had it. The dots she's talking about, and they're judging the trays, we have these little colored dots, and if you get a dot, it's called a measle. You don't want to earn one of those. That means you've either put the wrong size, the wrong shape. It does not meet the demands of that sheet that I gave to you. So measles, you don't want to go there. I happen to have a fascination for buttons with different numbers of holes. The first time I found a 3-hole button, I thought, this is really ridiculous. I don't understand that at all. Well, come to find out, they developed the 3-hole button particularly for men's shirts because they wouldn't pucker. When they, sewed the button on, that 3rd hole gave it strength, and it worked best. Notice in shirts. They didn't care about the women at that time, I guess. But there's a reason usually for everything other than decoration. Materials, you can find buttons made from cardboard. Sue makes them from potatoes that I like. She dehydrates them and colors them, and they're fascinating. And I think that one, how many holes did it have, Sue? 3 hole, because she knew I liked the 3-hole button. So I have a green 3-hole button at home made from a potato. But I can't explain the need for walking into a room and seeing buttons with vendors smiling gleefully behind their table because they know you're hooked. There's no way you can walk away from that. I particularly like realistics. And realistics are those buttons, just as the name says. You can look at it and know it's a kitty cat or a dog, or it's not a seeing button. It's something you can touch and relate to. I know I can't pick, why can't I pick out a Battersea? The fact that it's Wisconsin born. And the lady comes to our shows each year, and she usually, it's Christmas buttons, and she used to have another one that she would just make particularly, not so much for subject, but just for the year. And what else was it, Sue, that Battersea picked up on? But the little faces on the back are fascinating to look at. And it's where the shank is. And it's a little man. He's looking out at you as you whip around and sew your button in place. I particularly like dogs and elephants and kitty cats and sailboats. So my trays, you will find all of those items that jump out at me and call my name way too often. When I go to an auction, I don't have that much luck. Dave has luck. He knows what he's doing at an auction. I get too carried away. I either buy too many or let somebody else outbid me, and But it's the satisfaction when you get a tray and you get a ribbon without a dot. Success is yours. You're absolutely walking on cloud 9. And our shows, our national show is an international show. There will be a vendor there from Australia and England and Italy. So what started out in little bitty Rockton back in 1939 has developed into an international affair. That was longer than that. 5 or 6 years ago, there was a contingency of Chinese people at our button show in Madison, and they had come specifically to buy buttons for their shops. And of course, we think of going to getting buttons that are basically made in China, a lot of them. So, but it was fun to watch the experience those people were having. And trust me, money was no object for them. They were walking around really delighted with what they saw. Do you have questions that I might answer for you?
Have you ever purchased a garment just to get the button?
Yeah. I tried going to resale shops and I've tried going to estate sales, but I don't have much luck with that. I like somebody else. I really prefer a button show where they've already put them on cards so that I know what the materials are. I can see them. I can look at my list of what I want. And but sometimes, yeah, you've got to just have them. Another thing I was going to share with you, I went into Chicago, now I can't think of the name, they had a display of clothing that Jackie Kennedy wore. And I went specifically, I thought, the buttons will be outstanding. And I really made it a special effort to see this display because I just knew that would be top notch. I was never so disappointed in my whole life. They didn't treat the buttons, they tried to make them all the same color as the fabric she was, dressed in. And most of them were just plain old buttons. And I'm sure they didn't have fancy shanks. And most of them didn't even have fancy shapes. So it's kind of interesting. Buttons can become the fashion statement, or they can be downplayed, and they're the essential statement to keep the garment closed or in place. If you look at some of my cards and what I have, you think, if this button could talk, just what would it tell me? Why is it made, and where has it been, and what has it seen? And maybe it would be an X-rated show, who knows? But you can really get caught up in the fascination of these little insignificant buttons.
Do you have a holy grail that you're seeking at this point?
I don't know that I can go that far, but yeah. I'm getting ready to do 12 cards for the National. And I have, drew a blank here. I have dogs and cats and sails. And the big thing I've been driving myself crazy, and anybody else that would listen to me, I need 30 penguins. Penguins. All in different fabrics, all in different whatever. And you'd be surprised at all the little penguins I have come up with, and glass, plastic, count across, stitch on a fabric. I was hoping to find an old tie someplace. Sometimes they put animals or like penguins on ties, but I haven't found one of those yet that's been made into a button. But it's compulsive and obsessive and all of those other neat adjectives that you don't necessarily want to be, but you sure do meet a lot of great people and enjoy the life as a button collector. And if you have a button, look at it in a new light. It may tell you more stories than you ever thought about.
What I'm interested in is, I mentioned I have cloisonne buttons, but what other composition material makes a button valuable? Not necessarily the design of it, but
I don't think it's the composition that makes the button valuable. It's the design, it's the year it was made, if it has a back mark on it. It's just a whole group of adjectives that can make it an expensive button or not. That's, I don't know. How would you answer that, Sue?
It depends on who made it, how scarce it is, and how desirable it is. And you can get buttons that are made by Wedgwood, Michael Bolton. You can get buttons made in the 16th century, and you can get a Bakelite button for $0.25 that is just an ordinary button, which is wonderful too. And I would like to put in a plug for our groups, because I've been collecting for 20 years, and I just moved down here 2 years ago, and I was lucky enough to join the Rockton and Madison, and I go 90 miles up to Ridgeland Center because of the people. The reason I collect buttons is because I enjoy the people, and I belong to 3 clubs up in the Menominee area by Eau Claire, and I belong to both Minnesota and Wisconsin too, and it's a family. And I came down here and I knew all these people. I had friends down here. You go to National and you see them, and it's like you're seeing family members you haven't seen for a year. And we are welcoming people, and don't feel bad if you don't know anything, because we love to share our information. So please come, we'd love to have you.
Sometimes we overshare. We're an enthusiastic group and a very compatible group. I think that it's an outstanding.
So when you were talking about the penguin, so do people actually just make their original buttons and sell them at shows?
Those are called studio buttons, and yes, they do, but not so much. I know my little penguins have been made for garments that I have. I have them in glass. I have one studio penguin that I can't. He's got 3 different fabrics that he's made from, but he's quite tall and very outstanding. But I don't think so.
Do you have any button that's associated with a person or an event?
Oh yes, yes. State buttons. Buttons with special events like conventions, they will make a button.
Civil War buttons?
Civil War buttons, some people collect, particularly men, like Civil War uniform buttons are standouts.
Is in this country, in the United States, is there considered like a golden age of buttons when they were really, I mean, I look at some of the Bakelite buttons, so big ones, and they're just so beautiful and colorful and ornate. You know, you don't see those made now.
There's a whole card of golden age buttons. They're made between 1820 and 1850. And that's a specific kind of golden age button, too. Those are watch gears buttons. But they're in that period. And they are called that.
I had an article, and of course, when you try to save things, sometimes it doesn't happen that way. This was a newspaper from Southern Illinois that the lady had written about a wedding that had happened, turn of the century, 1900s. And the bride's dress, and at that time they wore black instead of white. And she could hardly walk because of the weight of the buttons that was on that garment. And it was all the way down the back and on the front, and it was like 250 buttons that this wedding gown had. And can you imagine? Not every button had a purpose other than being ornate.
One for 250 collectors.
Right, somebody standing in line to get that button.
I guess what I was getting at is buttons today are mostly utilitarian.
Yeah.
But, I think go back into some of the clothes of the 40s or 50s. They were part of
That was the decor.
yeah, they were really part of the design of the dress or whatever. And you really don't see that anymore.
No. Well, we have Velcro, we have zippers. One of the first groups that I talked about my buttons, the gentleman there's father had been a tailor, and he was so upset when zippers became part of, the national trend, because he thought he'd be out of business. People wouldn't need a tailor to make the buttonholes or sew the buttons on if they had those fancy gizmos called a zipper. And he was elderly at the time when the zippers were introduced, but his father just became very melancholy, and he just to think that they'd replace buttons and buttonholes was just about more than that tailor could handle. This building in Rockton sits right on the Rock River. And at one time, the Rock River had a lot of mussel shells. And at the same time when the guy was talking about his dad getting so melancholy, the kids in the summer were expected to dive into the river and pull those mussel shells up, because then they would take them to make the pearl buttons. Yeah. So, and where is it in Iowa that people go to the Button Museum?
Muscatine.
Muscatine has a button museum, and it's the same thing there. They collect, made the buttons. Feel free to come look at my buttons.
When she asked what makes a button valuable, what you look for, and I couldn't help but think, well, it is everything, color, style, design. It's like you have to recognize the Van Gogh in any picture and in any button.
That's true. And the other thing that makes them valuable, again, is the back mark. If Goodyear, if you get some Goodyear buttons are really outstanding.
What do some of those back marks look like? You mentioned dot dots, so what else might there be?
I was trying to find you one. I will go through my cards here, and why I can't put my hand on a back mark is more than I can understand.
Would the book show back marks? Like it does with pottery, like when you cut pottery, the books?
Is there back marks in any of our books, Dave? Back marks?
Yes, there's a section in that big book.
In that big book on...
Almost every section, like glasses got a section, Bennett's got a section.
Yeah, but I know... Oh,
Every
I'm
type
hooked up
of
here.
button's got a different section.
Yeah.
And there's an appendix in the back, too.
Yeah.
That if you go to the name of the company, you can look it up, they'll tell you when it was made.
I will find one with a back mark, and hopefully I can find a Battersea so you can see the little heads. They're darling.
I'm interested in some of these little doggy, there's a giraffe, and some other odd shapes. How in the heck can you put that through a buttonhole?
Most of those, I think, are put on and then they have snaps under them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't worry anymore.
Okay. Or else they're absolutely just for decor, that just sew one on so they're there.
There was one thing I forgot to add. All these cards and wires and any extras you may need, they're all going to be at that show next week. There'll all be dealers they'll have them.
Is it a large community of button collectors? Are you numerous, or?
There are 3,000 national members, and there's international members, and there's a big community in England. But what do we have about?
We have 8 in Rockton members. We have 25, I believe it is, that come to the Madison meetings.
And then statewide, I think we have about just a little over 100 in Wisconsin, but probably of those, there's probably 75 that attend meetings and come to shows at one time or another. And that's about the same in most states.
Illinois has 8 separate button groups. You know, Illinois is a long state from the top down to the bottom, and we meet in Bloomington once a year for our state show. Any other questions I can? Well, it's been a delight, and if you have the urge to have a button, just let me know. I know where you can find some.
Thank you so very much.